The Liberal government is delaying my investigation into Gerald Butts' new employer, the Eurasia Group, until well after the election. Today I'll show you all the reasons they're giving me for blocking my access to these federal government documents. Back in August, I broke the story that Gerald Butts' new employer, the Eurasia Group, received a sole-sourced $200,000 federal government contract shortly after Butts joined the company. It was a neat little gig for Gerald Butts, wasn't it? Leave the Prime Minister's office in disgrace amidst a scandal for what could be political meddling in the criminal prosecution of a corrupt Quebec-based engineering company called SNC-Lavalin, then make a lateral move to a private sector company. Then all of a sudden that same company gets a sole source contract to do energy analysis work for the federal government. Anyway, after I broke the news, Gerald Butts started threatening to sue people on Twitter, namely Alberta-based entrepreneur Brett Wilson, for daring to share my story. To Mr. Wilson's credit, he didn't seem all that worried about Mr. Butts, and neither was I, considering that my story was completely backed up with government contract documents. Then I got a demand email from Eurasia Group telling me to take my story down. Here's their demand email to me. This is a request to correct the record regarding yesterday's article about Gerald Butts, Eurasia Group, and Natural Resources Canada. Natural Resources Canada has been a Eurasia Group client since 2017, and Gerald Butts has not been involved in that relationship in any stage. Eurasia Group is an independent, nonpartisan research firm that employs senior advisors from across the political spectrum and has worked with global investors, multinational corporations, and governments, including in Canada, since 1998. In short, the basis of this article is inaccurate, and we asked you to please retract it accordingly. But they didn't point out to me what was inaccurate. And I've never actually had a demand for retraction that bolsters my original story by sending me down yet another investigation rabbit hole about a previous contract I didn't know about. But here we are. So in response to their demand that I take down my story, I asked Eurasia Group a whole slate of questions to clarify their relationship with both Gerald Butts and the federal government over the last few years. Here's my email to Eurasia Group in response. I am doing a follow-up story to the original and have some further questions for Eurasia Group. When did Eurasia Group receive their first grant, contract, or begin doing business with the Canadian government or any of its agencies? Do these contracts predate Mr. Butts' time with the PMO? Will you provide a list of all the contracts or grants or payments for work done for the Canadian government or its agencies, along with the total value of those grants or contracts? Was Gerald Butts involved in any manner in any of Eurasia Group's previous dealings with the Canadian government or its agencies? If so, what did he do? When engaged in or pursuing business with the Canadian government or its agencies, which government employees were emailed, lobbied, phoned, or contacted? Who did Eurasia Group liaise with from the Canadian government, and when? When did Mr. Butts begin his business relationship with Eurasia Group, and in what capacity? I look forward to your answers so that I may include them in my story. And since Eurasia Group was just so darn eager to talk, or rather threaten me, and demand that I pull down a story, I thought they would be more than happy to answer my questions and clarify their positions. But they didn't even acknowledge my email to them. So I set about trying to get answers another way, my favorite way. I asked the federal government for records of communication, so emails, texts, and instant messages, with Eurasia Group regarding their work for the department, and then we gave the contract number for the $200,000 sole source contract that Eurasia Group got after Gerald Butts joined them, plus the previous contract that Eurasia Group had since 2017, including communications mentioning or including Mr. Gerald Butts. You see, when Eurasia Group started trying to intimidate me and Gerald Butts was offering to sue an Alberta-based entrepreneur named Brett Wilson for even daring to talk about this sole source contract, it didn't scare me. It made me even more suspicious that there was something even bigger than what I had already uncovered happening here. Eurasia Group, well, they were trying to scare me away from a bigger story. However, predictably, the federal government has now taken an exemption of 60 days instead of the statutory 30 days to provide this information to me, as in I won't have this information until after the federal election. Isn't that convenient? So while the predictable time delay is frustrating, the response from the Office of the Information Commissioner completely contradicts Eurasia Group's original contention that Gerald Butts wasn't involved in anything, in any way at all. We just have to dig down on the exemptions that they're claiming for not being able to give the information to me in the time required by law. The government is claiming sections 91B and 91C of the Information Act. Here is their explanation for extended time. It's required because consultations are necessary to comply with the request and cannot reasonably be completed within the original time limit. In addition, we are taking exemption under 91C of the Act to complete third-party consultation. That third party involved that the government needs to consult with is the only party that we inquired about in the request, and that is the one and only Mr. Gerald Butts. You see, Eurasia Group told me in that threatening email that Gerald Butts is not involved in any way in any of their contracts or dealings with the federal government. But the exemptions the government is now claiming for not turning over the documents in the statutory amount of time required by law are because the government needs to consult with the one and only person involved. There may be private information contained about that person in the emails. It looks like there are so many Eurasia Group communications involving Gerald Butts that they need 2 extra months to go through them all. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. We file dozens of access to information requests into the federal government every single month, and that can cost us sometimes thousands of dollars a month, and that's not even counting all the man hours to read through these enormous stacks of paperwork. And you know what? All these investigations, they aren't all winners, but we don't know until we read through the documents. Now, to help support our access to information, accountability journalism, and to help us continue to ask the questions of the government that nobody else is, you can make a contribution today at rebeldonations.com. And I'll keep publishing all my source documents because you know what? They're your source documents too. Again, that page is rebeldonations.com.